Hi everyone, I'm back today with another video using products from Bee Crafty, and I decided that I wanted to make another card for my Memory Dex from Heidi Swap. I've started off by cutting out some Memory Dex style cards. They're not actually a Heidi Swap die, but they came with my Memory Dex, and I wanted to use my Gelli plate, which I am not very good at getting to grips with. So I'm starting off by adding some Dina Wakley acrylic paint. The colours I'm using here are Peacock and Olive, and I've used a very thin layer of paint to try to get a better result than I usually do when I do my Gelli plate printing. I used two different shapes of Memory Dex card, and they are on a mixed media paper from De La Rowney. I started just by making a base colour for them after brayering my paint onto the Gelli plate, and I'm using some of the Bee Crafty Dinkables now to add some texture. We've got Metal Alpha, Circles, Honeycomb and Circle Lattice. I started by putting the paper over the top to remove some of the paint before adding the pattern to my Memory Dex cards. Now this one I wasn't too happy with by the end. You'll see it ends up quite dark. This one I liked a lot better, and I think it was because of the open spaces in the Dinkable that made some of that lightness shine through a lot better. I wanted a bit of a contrast, so I'm now adding the cheddar acrylic paint to the Gelli plate, and I decided to try brayering some of the paint away through the Dinkable to see how that turned out. Now on this one, as you can see, I wasn't very happy, so this one I just decided to add touches of the cheddar to the card, and I liked that one a lot better. So I decided this was the one I was going to go with. I wanted a contrasting colour to my background, and so I chose the fuchsia paint, and I'm using a stencil brush with the Metal Alpha to add a little bit of the contrasting pink to parts of the card. At the end of this section I had quite a bit of the paint left over, and you may have noticed that when I was using my Gelli plate I was rolling my brayer off onto a spare piece of mixed media card, and I added the rest of that paint to that as well, which you'll see in a moment when I use it for something else. I'm now adding some background stamping, so I'm using the stitch borders to start with and the archival inks in the distress colours. So started with the peeled paint, and when I stamped it onto the card it really wasn't showing at all, so I decided that I would try with the Mermaid Lagoon, which I was much happier with and showed up a lot more. So I'm just adding some stamping with the little circles that are on the stitch borders. They did come in one big long line with another part of the stamp, but I actually chopped them in half so that I could use them separately. Now using some of the sort of stitched lines, and I'm using the Faded Jeans archival distress colour, and I decided that I wanted a focal image and a focal sort of area across the width of my card, and so I started by adding the lines across where I'm going to have my focal points. Then I added a few more bits as well, and then I decided to add this other lined stitched border, and this time I'm using red geranium. For some reason the first time I stamped it really didn't come out, but when I re-inked it and used it again it was much better. So now I'm taking a piece of heat-proof acetate and the film strip stamp from the Texture Film Strip and Circle stamp set. I'm using VersaFine black ink and then using a clear embossing powder over the top to seal it. I have noticed that when I use the VersaFine onto acetate it doesn't have such a strong blackness as it does onto card. Now this is the piece of waste card that I was talking about earlier that I used with my brayer when I was just cleaning it off. So I decided that because the colours matched and I'd added on the stenciling over the top, I would use it as the backdrop for the tape measure from the stitch border set, because then it would match in with the rest of my project. Again, I do like to use VersaFine with clear embossing powder, mostly because when I usually do my stamping, I'm never too sure what I'm going to use to colour it in, so I figure that if I do the embossing over the top, then it doesn't matter what I use. I'm now using the butterfly from the Dragon and Butterfly set, which is one of my favourite of the butterflies that Bee Crafty produce, and I've also using that same background. I sort of had a look, see which part of the background I liked, so that I was getting a bit of some different colours and also a little bit of the stenciling. I'm not sure what happened there with the video. I cut them all out. I don't think you'd want to see that. And I'm also using a piece of black cotton to add a little bit more texture and interest. I didn't want to cover up all the stamping I'd done across the middle, so I put my tape measure slightly above it, and the film strip I also did on acetate so that you would be able to see the other the stamping and the stenciling through the background. Then I added my cotton and my butterfly so that they're quite 3D. At this point I realised I should have actually done this before I put everything else together, but I'm now framing my card with a little bit of black archival, and I'm using my little ink pad because it's not quite as juicy as my big one, because I do use my re-inker on that one, and it's quite good for adding shading around the edges as it's not too wet. This is from the Small Words set, and I decided to go with Never Give Up because I do struggle a little bit with my Gelli plate, and my idea is that I will not give up with it and I will keep going until I learn how to use it properly. So I decided to just cut it out by hand and again add a little bit of ink around the edges to tie it all together. All the products that are from Bee Crafty are available on their website, and I will put a link to that down in the description box underneath. If you've enjoyed the video, please do give me a thumbs up to show you liked it, and if you're not already subscribed, I would love it if you would do that as well. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.